Now we're open for discussion. I think it would be helpful if when you first speak, you could just say who you are. Right? So, open to the floor.
Thank you very much. I have no questions, at least for the time being. I wanted to congratulate the organizers for the subject, the topicality of the subject. Shipping always has been important, of course, for Cyprus. It's more important nowadays, obviously, because of the situation there. A sector for employment, no doubt about that, is a sector which provides stability more than perhaps any other sector. Even tourism is not so subject to more changes. And a very, very important aspect is the privileged position that Cyprus has in terms, for shipping, in terms of the European Union. One of the most important, I thought it was the second position. I think Mr. Georgiou said the third position. Anyway, one of the most important positions within the European Union. I think Cyprus, Greece, and Malta represent 75% of the shipping strength within the European Union. So it gives Cyprus a privileged position, really. Now, I want to dispute the final conclusion regarding the influence of the sea on the national identity. I may be, of course, in a minority, but I speak in terms of my own experiences. Now, very fascinating title and very fascinating subject, Thalassa, the influence of the landscape of the sea on an island culture. Well, speaking from my own experience, really, and it goes a little back, of course, the general feeling, as I felt it, was that the sea was, you have an island there, and the sea was the source of tragedies, rather. I remember my parents, and I was not an exception, of course, advising, rather ordering, not advising, keep away from the sea. The sea is something bad. And it's very, very indicative that you had so many villages built by the sea, but no one thought to have either in the schools or in any other way teaching the children how to swim. And it was, you had very, very often tragedies, real tragedies, because, well, as children, we wanted to go to the sea, we couldn't swim. Here you are, we had a tragedy that gave another argument for the parents to say, here you are, you should keep away. Now, it might be, I don't know why, but being a source, as I said earlier on, of invasion, it created the feeling that is something dangerous. It's very indicative. You gave us an example, a church by the sea, as an indicative of the respect, of the importance in terms of religion as well. The combination, yes. The combination of sea with religion. Well, in fact, those are exceptions from my own experience. The most important place of religion and general respect and the fairs you had and the enjoyment you had were with the churches inland. Well, I wouldn't give the example of Kikos, of course, which was the most important example. But that's the feeling I had from my own experience. It would be very nice for other people to give their own opinions on that. Thank you very much.
Would you like to respond to this initially, Jan?
I'm happy to just come back to you on that. Because, of course, I think my presentation was giving the image of the landscape of the sea in a very positive way, but of course, having grown up by the sea, your comments resonate with my own experience. And I would say, well, actually, that negativity that the sea brings with it is part of the influence of the sea. So in fact, you're saying it dominated my childhood, therefore actually reinforcing what I'm saying about the importance of the sea. That in fact that it's magnetic, it's all powerful, and therefore I mean, it's a Christian thing to sort of think we live with the sea and we are dominant over it, and that's the imagery of that's in the Bible. But in fact, we have to respect that it is a force that is out of human control. And of course, shipping recognises that by calling storms acts of God. So those negative aspects of the sea remind us, I would say, in island culture, to recognise that the sea is a pervading force and it's magnetic. And I think that's the thalasser, is if you, or everybody, I mean, even documentaries now, I can think of a few, and the one thing they say, oh, you must make your way to the sea, because the sea is a kind of place where human civilization has located itself traditionally, so it's not just Cyprus. But of course, with that comes negative aspects or danger, as you said. So I fully recognise that. I think that's actually part of it. And of course, civilizations live by the sea have a seasonal aspect to the way in which their culture lives. In the winter, everybody stays inside and doesn't go out near the sea. In the summer, you might go and eat and have barbecues by the sea. So both aspects are there.
Well, I come from Lapidus, a village which is near the sea. And I come from the side of the village that is the nearest to the sea. And it starts from there, starts about 1.5 miles or 2 miles away from the sea, Lapidus, and goes up to the mountains. It was the biggest village for Cyprus at the time. And once, when I grew up, I remember, I wanted to go swimming. And I went to live with my father, and I asked him why we are not near the sea. Why Lapidus starts 2 miles away from the sea and goes up to the mountain? And he said, because sea brings people who come and assault Cyprus, and the Arabs who come and raid Cyprus and kill people and take money away. So Lapidus had to draw further from the sea. So sea was a threat.
Yes.
Can I bring in an additional dimension? My name is Orestes Suits, I'm the director of the Cyprus Tourism Board of London. And I agree with you in terms of identifying the Cypriots as small island economies with fatalism and being next to the sea and not being ready to go into the sea. But on the other hand, we have the seafaring traditions that bring with them an interaction, brings with them tolerance and compromise. So, I mean, that's the other element, because we lie as an island. We are at the crossroads of the civilization. When we have the rationality of the West, we are trying to get towards the West, and we have the absolute power of the East with the religious icons and the absolute roots of the East and the Orthodox Church. And obviously, we're trying to have both the work ethic of the West and the fact that a lot of us have been trained and have been studied in the West, and basically like to be quite pragmatic about certain issues. So that's the additional element that we can be taught by democratic societies, like in America, for example, which you find that all the democratic states are on the coast, and all the fundamentalists are inside the block, and they are very set in.
Yes, I think that I think that's Wright, and I think, I mean, one can use an example of the sea in America, what damage the hurricane did, and how I think in the West there is sometimes a lack of memory of the dangers that the sea brings with it, and that if you build right on the sea, that in actual fact you perhaps endanger your societies, and I think also if you as you said, compromise and the ability to be diplomats is actually a key part of that island culture. And I think that's something I need to perhaps expand on and look at more, because, you know, dealing with the sort of two, if you like, at the sort of crux, if you like, to the engagement of two cultures, I think it's one of the important aspects.
If we come to the current example, we are part of this big ship called Europe, and suddenly we find that we're thrown into a smaller boat. We don't know how big the boat is, we don't know how deep is the sea, and we don't know how, when we're going to reach shore and how safe it will be. So we have to swim.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think it's quite interesting, the sort of, if you like, the island reaction to that big ship of Europe, to use the metaphor. And I'm not so sure that the British people are not having quite a similar sort of kind of, well, actually, let's just think about this a minute, sort of reaction, given what's happened recently, you know, to Cyprus. And I think that's a concern for all of us. You know, you can't just think, oh, well, that's, you know, a little island in the Mediterranean, it's nothing to do with us. I think the lessons can be learned for others.
Yes.
Thank you. An observation first, and then a question. I'm not sure which of you feels best placed to answer it. But the observation first, the way living on an island conditions one's view of the rest of the world. I recall a time I was in Switzerland, looking in the hotel and looking at the tariff of telephone charges, and there were 3 levels. There was domestic telephone calls, international telephone calls, and overseas telephone calls. And I thought to myself, surely the last 2 are the same. But then, of course, the penny dropped that what is overseas and international synonymous if you live on an island is very definitely not so if you live in the middle of the continent. But the question, the notion of selling Cyprus by selling images of the sea, to what extent is that a new phenomenon? We heard a moment or 2 ago about how the sea used to be almost disregarded, even if it was quite close by, that it was something that you existed in spite of. There was no denying it was there, but it wasn't anything you gravitated towards. The map that you showed the population distribution of the island as it is now, where all the large centres, with the obvious exception of Nicosia, the population are distributed around the coast. If we go back, say, 3, 4, 5 decades to a predominantly agrarian society, where much of the population lived distributed inland, as far as I can gather, at places that were significant because they were close to sources of water, fresh water rather than seawater. To what extent would the island historically have been marketed by images of the sea? Perhaps, what do the old religious icons show? Are there many that show images of the sea? Are they predominantly inland scenes that are shown? I think some of the early Cyprus tourism organisation promotional material focused more on the mountain landscapes and the historical buildings of the island rather than on the sea. So, to what extent has that identification of Cyprus with the sea evolved over time? Has it always been the dominant theme that it is now?
I come from Augusta, therefore I'm also from the sea, but unlike you, I'm a little bit slightly younger, so I don't remember it ever being a threatening thing. The sea was always, we had respect for the sea, which was unlike anybody else who didn't live by the sea. It wasn't fear, but it was respect. You had to be careful. The sea wasn't to be played with because it was a dangerous thing. But you learn from a very early age to do that. I would have said that places like Famagusta, which were a port, obviously the sea was important to the city, it was important to the people, and it was part of our lives. But maybe a village like Lapithos that did not have boats, then the sea was something completely different. I would imagine that Limassol, also being a port city, and Larnaca as well, all the seacoast cities, the cities as opposed to villages, then the relationship between the citizens and the sea was different to the relationship between the villagers and to the sea. I think this is
Can I just
one there, no one there.
I think the relation between at least Cyprus and the sea changes with time.
Yes.
It's different. Lapithos might have been moved away to avoid the invaders.
Yes.
But nevertheless, down by the sea, it's a magnificent Roman period city submerged with where the sea was extremely important, not only as means of commerce, but also there was a magnificent swimming pool carved in the sea, in the rocks. I don't know, of that period, not an Indian period. Cyprus. And at that time, they loved it, they enjoyed it, as well as they had business with it. And, you know, all throughout, I was talking recently to a fisherman in Paphos, and his attitude to the sea was entirely different to mine. So I come from an inland town in Lucia, and I was worried to go to the sea, and my mother worried stiff if I went to the sea and did not come back on time. And, you know, but he had a different attitude. He loved the sea, he used the sea, and he knew about the sea. He was very cautious of how to tackle the sea. So, you know, it changes with place and time, but certainly in Cyprus, it has always been significant because we have to import most of the things to outside.
always still do.
Yeah, I just wanted to say to the question that was written on when Cyprus was actually linked so strongly towards sea and beach pictures. I think that probably happened around the early 1980s when tourism started to become the key industry in Cyprus. Having said that, I think it's important to know that one of the key problems that Cyprus faces today is its image, its international brand image. And part of the problem is because there was never a real planned strategy on promoting and creating a specific image that the country itself wanted. So it was always heavily dependent on the Cyprus Tourist Organization, which was probably the only organization in Cyprus with some sort of funds to do any sort of international promotion. And that's why the connotation that people have on Cyprus when they think of Cyprus was either in the earlier days Magarios, because he was a figure that was well known, then it was the invasion, then it was tourism and hence the beach, and now unfortunately it's the financial situation.
Yes, can I just follow on from that? Partly help to address Tim's point. Very interesting, if you go back to, say, the 19th century and indeed to the early part of the 20th century, many British people who travelled to Cyprus, also at least the Mediterranean generally, were people, and largely men, who were gone to public school, and possibly also to university, and been steeped in the classics. And their trips to the Mediterranean were influenced in part by their desire to retrace the footsteps of the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans who they read about. And what we've seen with the emergence of the modern tourism industry built around the beach, that emergence has taken place in parallel with the decline of classics in our schools. And it's also taken place, I suppose, in parallel with the secularization and de-Christianization of this country. So people in the past who may have gone to Cyprus in search of either the classical footsteps or some connection with the biblical past are being replaced by people talking about mass tourism markets, people who are just interested in the beach. And looking at the future, if Cyprus is to emerge from this disaster that it's found itself in, a return to a more sophisticated and educated approach to tourism might be a way out.
I mean, I think that's absolutely right. And I was actually quite amazed. I mean, I put the pictures up there because that's what you get when you do a search for images of Cyprus. And I thought, well, that's saying something in itself, that the contemporary environment is dominated by that touristic image. But there's a much bigger story to be told. There's there's lots of history in terms of the context and also the religious aspect that people perhaps would have gone to Cyprus for in the past, but at the moment that's in mass tourism is what's dominating in terms of the landscape of the sea.
Mary.
Okay. I'm Mary Sackett, and I'm from Friends of Cyprus, and I didn't think I was going to enjoy this conference because it doesn't really impact on my thinking, my work, and what I want for Cyprus. And I'm delighted that the women presentations, they're all from women, actually took it in a different direction from the one that I thought it was going to take. I am very connected with the Metropolitan University on Holloway Road because I organised a Friends of Cyprus conference here, and it was the first one that ever had women in it. And Lord Bethel, the late Lord Bethel, said he was going to have women over his dead body. And I said, okay, that's fine with me. And I noticed today that we dealt with the issues in different ways, and that's why I didn't want the men just to take over. So I wanted to speak, and I couldn't even get the chairs to recognise that I was waving my hand. I came up on the lift today with a gentleman, and I recognised he had an accent, which I thought was Turkish. And so I asked him where he came from, and he said, Afghanistan. He said, but my mother was Turkish. Now, where do you get culture from? Where do people learn their culture? They learn it at their mother's knee. And even in these emancipated unisex days, we still have a lot to learn from women. But in Cyprus, nobody learns from women. And so I was really pleased to put women on the map in a cultural, emotional way, because I think that's the bit of Cyprus that gets lost. And I wanted to just share with you a story. We had Jo Richardson. She was an MP. She was the first minister for women. We didn't even think in Britain we needed women ministers. And she came and chaired a session with Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots, and we came and presented our findings to the public in Holloway Road, so that's why I'm remembering. And Lelos Dimitriadis, the mayor, embraced his feminine and gave me this Aphrodite. And I always wear it when I do Cyprus events because it's pre-Hellenic. It can't be Ottoman. It has to be Cypriot. And that's why I wear it. And most people think it's a crucifix. And a lot of Muslims that I deal with think it's a crucifix. But it's not. It's about women. It's about the essence of things. And as we talked in this group, we had two women, Bobby Daniel, who made films, beautiful films about Cyprus and turtles, and she translated plays into Turkish and produced them in Turkish, and you know, she was amazing. And Oya Talat, who then became the wife of the Turkish Cypriot leader, let's say. They led the group into being honest about their emotions. They led the group from talking about the economy, the strategic importance of the island, the military, the tanks, and all the things that the men were talking about, into talking about how they felt about Cyprus being divided, how they felt about the future of their children, and if they had to go into the army, and if violence broke out again on the island. And they talked about education and the values that you inculcate with children through your education system. And I feel that what this has demonstrated to me today is that women have got to take more of a part in the Cyprus solution. So I'm just saying that from my point of view, and thank you, all of you, because even Anna, who I know really well, her presentation brought different sides to the issue, different concerns, and I do believe that women embrace their emotions better and they pass on cultural influences. So I've said enough. I just don't want the men to hold the sea.
Just to say, bring it back to the men. Sorry. I'm trying to cooperate a lot of tours with the British Museum. My name is Andreas Kesh. I used to run an archaeological tourist company from which was bought from the British Museum. But anyhow, Cyprus really is at the center of the Middle East, truly, and the influences from around the area are so prominent and so real in Cyprus itself. That is unreal. The sea made all that happen. So the sea is a friend to Cyprus in a big, big, big way. And it has influenced the culture of the Cyprus, of the Cypriot people, in a very, very big way. Our moods almost represent the moods of the sea. Gloomy in winter, now very excited and very, very happy in spring and summer when things are going well. That's Cyprus.
Well, we're almost time for lunch. I want to ask Mary. There's always a point that relates to Mary's presentation. And it was right at the end. The first female Cypriot church singer was in the credits. I'm following up Mary's point.
Isn't she wonderful? And she was telling me that when she trained, she went and trained in Greece as to be a church singer. But when she applied to sing, to chant at the church in Cyprus, she had to go for an interview with various priests and bishops and to see if they approve a woman to chant in the church. And she was saying that everybody was quite hostile. They couldn't believe that a woman had the right to chant. Apart from the Bishop of Kikos, apparently, who said to them all, "Look, her voice is superb. She knows all the chants, so why shouldn't she?" And they allowed her to chant in the church, and she does now from time to time.
And there was no influence from, say, Venice, who had all-female choir. Venice was ruling Cyprus. There was no influence from Venice, and Venice was ruling Cyprus.
I know. Well, I don't know what the Bishop of Kikos was thinking.
Sorry?
I was going to say, not with the Orthodox Church.
No, I was going to say, yeah, the Orthodox Church doesn't have females. No, full stop.
Well, on that note, we have the opportunity at the final session of the
But
program.
nobody mentioned that the head of cinema, culture, and sport in Europe is Androula Vasiliou. And she's very much appreciated, and she's recorded the Queen.
She's very good.
That's a response to
Well, this is true, and she's so good, so active, so appreciated, and she controls it too.
These things might be changing a bit. We can raise these issues in the final session of our program today.